over 20 years. So I kind of was count at some point. I've done First Steps program. I still see kids in the First Steps program. My primary job right now is physical therapist for early childhood special education in Columbia, Missouri, and that's where we serve the kids that are 3 to 5. I'm also on the team that evaluates any child coming out of First Steps to see if they qualify for services in an early childhood special education program. I've also worked at RESC Rehabilitation with adult spinal cord injury, pediatric brain injury, orthopedics. I don't know, I think I've done just about everything. But I've been almost all peds this whole 20 plus years, which is weird to say. Anyway, the reason that I came across an article, I can't remember which one it was. I don't even know how I came across it. Looking at something, I came across this article, and I think there was this one, and it was like a podiatrist article, and it was about Down syndrome, a serious pediatric pediatric issue. And I just started to think about it a lot and how we try to decide if we're going to brace our kids or not brace our kids, and then really also wanting to figure out what happens to them when they're teenagers, what happens to them when they're adults if we don't lift their feet now. And kind of started asking some of my friends and other PT people, like, what's your experience? What do you think? And so got some input from people, not a lot. There is not a lot of research out there about adults and what their feet are going to look like. But just in deciding to do this, I've talked to a few people. One of the therapists I know was saying that we had a kid that was in our program who was very, extremely, really low-tone kid. Was a walker, but pretty loose and pretty floppy, and braced him for a while, but then he kind of became a walker. And then he wasn't braced for a while. And then when he got older to be a teenager, his feet got really bad, almost to the point where he was having a hard time walking. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, I really want to know what really needs to be done. What do we look at? What do we do about this? I just talked to one of our teachers today in early childhood who has a brother who is 30 years old with Down syndrome. So I'm like, so what are his feet like? I'm like, how's that all going? And she's like, well, they have to buy really wide shoes. They're hard to find. He's already had knee surgery. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So this is, I don't know, I just wish there was more research on it. So this is kind of, I did a little more research after this. This is kind of my 2 cents worth. Some of it's my personal opinion too, supported by articles too. So the whole thing, to support or not to support, people happy wearing shoe inserts. So I wanted to go over a little bit of terminology because you guys probably hear a lot of these terms, you may or may not, and so that I can explain them. So pronation, and there's kind of a picture there, and it's when your ankles roll in. That's when they kind of do this thing. That's mostly what you're going to see in kids with Down syndrome. Supination is the opposite. Rarely will you see that, but most kids have that where their ankles are rolling. And pes planus is that flat foot, where they're just not developing that arch. Most kids with Down syndrome have a combination of the flat foot and the pronation. So one kind of comes with the other. Sandal gap, that's this one right here. Not every kid with Down syndrome has this, but some do. And depending on if they do, you're going to look at what you're going to put them in a little bit differently. You typically want something that's going to come all the way up under the foot because you want to prevent that from spreading. Because when they get to be older, that can be really hard to get a shoe on.
We can't see the picture, but when you say sandal gap, is it like some extra gap between the big toes?
Yep.
Okay.
So, and I've seen some kids with Down syndrome that have it, and some that do not have it at all. Some that have it mild, some that have it really big.
There's a gap in the...
Yeah, between the big toe.
Oh, okay.
I don't think she does. No, she does not have sandal gap. She doesn't have it.
Okay.
So, but you'll see some kids, and it's really big. And that's one thing that I'll kind of look at, that I know that that's not going to change. And that as they get older and they become teenagers and they grow and they're heavier, and then adults, I've heard that it's really hard to find a shoe, that they start to have a lot of knee problems, just a lot of things like that are related to that. And that was kind of a new term to me until recently. Calcaneus. That is this little triangle bone on the back of the heel that we PTs are always looking at to see how much it is tilted. That is kind of how we decide what kind of orthotic a kid needs to be in, how severe is the tilt. So if you hear any of those terms, that's kind of what that is. You can kind of look at the back of a kid's ankle right there, and it's just that kind of little triangle thing right there. That's your calcaneus. Hypotonia, most of you know, is just that low muscle tone. Most kids with Down syndrome have low muscle tone, and some sort or another, of varying degrees. You know, some are very, very severe, and some aren't as severe. The other important thing to know, I think, about hypotonia is when you have hypotonic muscles, the endurance of those muscles is different than someone that has typical muscle tone. What it takes for those muscles to get up and alert and to hold a posture is twice as much more energy, twice as much repetition, and that's something that's always going to be like that. So that's why sometimes, you know, it's when they're learning things, they'll get a position, they'll hold it for a little bit, and then it's gone. I mean, those muscles get tired, they get tired fast. So you kind of treat them like you're working out at the gym, lots of repetition, over and over and over and over again to build them up, to get them to where you want them to be.